Hi, I'm Fabian from Uplet, and my number one tip for achieving your China dream is move to China, interact with the locals, and just get started.
So for those people who are watching who don't know who you are, could maybe do a quick self-introduction?
So I lived in Thailand for a couple of months, in KL for a couple of months, and then a year plus in Singapore, where I used to work for a Singaporean company which was also operating in China. So that was actually my first real contact with China, where I got very interested in the market itself. Until I just decided, like, okay, I want to try it out. I want to give it a try in China itself. So I moved to Shenzhen, and basically with no plan. I posted on LinkedIn actually, okay, I'm moving to Shenzhen, what can I do? What are the opportunities there? And tons of people actually replied on that.
LinkedIn's great for that.
Yeah, so I just moved to Shenzhen without plan, and I met a couple of these people who replied on my LinkedIn post who were pretty much integrated. Myself, I have a marketing background, more in marketing technology, so that's why I looked around, like, what are the opportunities in China for that. I didn't know much about the channels, like I knew WeChat, that was it, right? So I was just looking around, okay, how could I execute my experience from working in Singapore, but also owning a company, which I did before in Poland and in the Netherlands. How can I take these experiences to basically execute in China? Like, I'm a foreigner in China, I didn't know much about China. I feel to execute in China, you should know kind of what's happening there or what's happening around there. So I started a marketing agency where I help Western companies get into China. So at least I could get this kind of barrier from Western companies. I was in China, so it's easier to get started and to find a network around there and across there. So where I started with is basically just through partnerships. So I mainly focus on the sales and collaborate basically with these companies which are already executing in China, like Western companies who are doing this already for like 5 years, and basically collaborate with them in a way. And I learned a lot from that in a short amount of time. Basically just by partnering up and say, okay, I can help you to get some clients, and I want to learn like how you execute. So in a very short amount of time, I got actually a lot of partnerships in that. What I also did is I organized an event in Hong Kong and was like, okay, how to get started in China. And then I would say with like 130 signups, and I just went there and I went speaking like just about my marketing experience in general. Not really how to execute in China, but there were a lot of companies which already executed in China. So that's how I learned, I would say, a lot more about China, where we had like discussions. And I was like, okay, I have to find out the right channels to get started. Like, I felt WeChat was not the right channel, but China has so many people, so there should be more channels around.
Yeah, I gotta say you're pretty ballsy, right? Like, so you're 24 years old. You've only been in Asia for what, like 2 years?
Yeah.
Come here, set up a company, start telling people how to market in China, right? But yet you're getting this response, right? And there's
Correct.
people that are really interested, and now you've got this China Influencer Summit, and you've got some like really big names there.
Correct.
Like, how did you manage to be able to develop a network like that so quickly?
So we scaled very, very fast. I think it's the way how you brand yourself, and I think because we could deliver quality, because I'm more into marketing technology, where we do a lot of ROI driven, data driven. So for me, I cannot make a lot of mistakes, because basically the response we get from the audience, I learn from that too. And the thing it is like, I'm pretty young, which a lot of Western companies actually like. It's like, hey, he actually tries to learn and knows what's going on, instead of he's owning this company already for 10, 15 years and he's doing the same thing. So I'm pretty young, which is one way, which helps me a lot. But I also, how to say, I also found these, because we're ROI driven, I learned a lot from different industries and different kind of target audiences. So this was a thing for me, like, okay, I knew kind of what was going on within the industry, and because we executed mainly and the start through influencers, I couldn't do a lot wrong. Like, these influencers are doing this already for a couple of years. So I myself couldn't do a lot wrong. I'm ROI driven, so I just see the data comes in from the influencers. I have my team who translate this back to English, which is valuable for me, but also valuable for my clients. So everything we do, we translate back to English, all the content we create, etc. So the influencers execute. So they know exactly how to execute within their particular field and for their target audience. The data which comes in, we basically analyze it, and we use different marketing metrics to basically execute again and adjust the content where needed. So I would say this is, yeah, how I got pretty big an understanding of the Chinese market, and then I just started reaching out. So I'm a person who sometimes forgets to think, and I just do it. So that's also not always good. But I feel now I'm like pretty the opposite of a lot of people who are having difficulties to get started. I usually get started, and then for me it's more difficult to scale and do this for a longer period of time. But this is actually working pretty well. So what I do is to get in touch with all these people, I just reach out. And I always think from a win-win situation. So even with the clients we work now and the KOLs, we try to kind of find a win-win situation for them, where we get as a company a lot of appreciation from both sides. Like we help the KOL basically get more Western companies to work with, build up their own portfolio. Then we really think like, okay, how can we help them besides just a paycheck for these KOLs? How can we help them in another way, right? So this is the one thing. And then for the companies, it's really how can they work with a KOL for like a longer time instead of just giving one's money and executing that. So we got a lot of appreciation from the companies and the KOLs itself. So this is how we got really fast within the industry itself. And because we're focusing on a couple of platforms like Douyin, which scaled very fast, and we branded ourselves that we were a kind of expert in that, which I would say are, like we have contact with Douyin, the company itself.
So for those people who are maybe outside China and they maybe have never heard of Douyin, or they've heard maybe recently, like it's now the most downloaded app, but they know nothing else about it. Could you tell us a bit more about Douyin? Like what is it and why is it so big? Like how did this happen? Yeah,
so Douyin is a short video app, which along with a lot of other apps in China, it's a short video where you can create content, basically up to 15 seconds. Where it started out as a kind of copy of Musical.ly. It's like the music is synced with the video, which not a lot of apps are, I would say. It's like the music is usually separated from the video, like you record first and then you can add the music to it. Where Douyin is, you record the video and the music at the same time. So this was pretty interesting. What Douyin actually did very smart is when they started out, like in summer 2016, they hired a bunch of potential KOLs or KOLs which were active on Musical.ly or on MayPie. So they basically hired these KOLs to create content for Douyin. So Douyin paid them per video, like until like a maximum of, I would say like 5,000-6,000 RMB per month. And they hired these young girls and guys from first-tier cities, which are basically living the life where a lot of Chinese look up to. Like they studied abroad, they speak good English, so the music syncing was with English songs. They used to live abroad, or they're living like the good life in China, I would say. So a lot of Chinese look up to that, so they want that. So they did this very smart to get this particular audience.
How many people more or less did they take?
So they started with around 50.
Okay.
So 50 influencers which they paid every single month to create content. And what they did very interesting, they did a lot of offline marketing, like very interesting offline marketing. So they got like their own karaoke booths already in like shopping malls like 2 years ago. They collaborate a lot with like restaurants and stuff like that. So now, for example, they collaborate with the Haidilao, where they have like their own kind of dish-ish, like because these short videos, they explain basically how to make a nice dish in Haidilao, right? So now Haidilao picked it up, and then so people say like, okay, I want this Douyin dish. So it's really the way how they did marketing is super interesting, and because there's like a big company in the back, you know, they have the resources. So they don't have like one team which is only Douyin. Like the Douyin team works in the Toutiao office. So that's a pretty interesting thing too. So like they use different resources from this big tech company, and then Toutiao, this Chinese company, acquired Musical.ly, where I think this makes them able to use like the different licenses from music, for example, from Musical.ly, use experience what Musical.ly had, the Musical.ly team, and apply that in Douyin. The other thing I would say, Douyin is a very Chinese app. Like for me as a foreigner, I learned a lot about Chinese culture when I use that app, like the humor, the things, how the perspective they look at things. So I learned a lot from Chinese culture through Douyin, but it's a very Chinese app. So you cannot, for example, download the app abroad. Then it's called like TikTok, which is now pretty popular Indonesia, Vietnam, South Korea, and Japan. So they have like 2 separated apps. They did this like on purpose because they don't want that whole globally everyone comes on the same app, because it's very tough to manage, I would say, different cultures and different kind of different cultures and different feelings about humor. What is humor? Like people in Indonesia probably think that they have a different kind of humor than Chinese have. So they really kind of locked it up with just Chinese people, which were make them able to grow super extremely fast, I would say.
You've managed to take your skills or your experience in marketing and step into the Chinese market and be able to build up a network and also get foreign brands to sort of connect with you and sort of become like the middleman in the middle, helping them sort of on both
Correct.
sides. Why did you originally decide to come over here to China, and why do you think that this is a good place for you to grow your business?
So I feel in China it's happening now, right? Like definitely now. Actually, I think I moved just before China became everywhere in the news. I think they do a lot of PR now. Definitely these bigger companies. Like a lot of people now heard about Tencent or Huawei, they know, but all these Chinese companies are like heading now to the West. I would say like a couple of companies did pretty well, like Huawei did, or OnePlus, which had like this huge event last week of like launching their new phone. So there are like a couple of these Chinese companies which do very well in terms of PR to put China on the map, I would say. And it's not a copycat country anymore, but they really have their own innovation and they do this very well.
Yeah.
So this was one of the reasons why I felt like, okay, I want to move to China. I don't know for how long, but I just want to experience China itself and how is it to live in China. So that's, I would say, one of the things, like I just wanted to experience it. Like I read a lot about it, I did a bit with my work in Singapore with it, but I really wanted to experience myself as a kind of entrepreneur, because I always used to have like different companies, small size. So I just wanted to try it out, like how is China, and then in particular Shenzhen, which is really like, they call it already like the Silicon Valley of Asia, which I would say is now becoming the kind of new Silicon Valley, because while living in Shenzhen, I see so many people from San Francisco coming over just basically to take a look what's happening here. I'm getting regular calls from tech companies from San Francisco. It's like, okay, we heard about all these Chinese platforms. How do they scale so fast? What are they doing? So this is the thing, like I felt I really want to experience China, and then in particular Shenzhen, because I'm more into tech, I would say, where Shanghai is more a New York City. So this, I don't feel really related to that, and Shenzhen is very Chinese still, where Shanghai is kind of westernized, and yeah, Shenzhen is like when I moved to Shenzhen, people are still looking at me like, hey, what's this foreigner doing in my area? Like now it's changing, it's going so fast, and there are more and more foreigners, like they pick it up. So yeah, I just wanted to experience it. Like I don't have any experience in China. I didn't came here with a lot of money or something like that. But sometimes people think like if you start a company, you need a lot of money. The majority of the business I started with like under $100 US, and I bootstrap it myself. And for this company, it's exactly the same thing. Like I didn't invest any much money. I didn't get a loan or something like that. I just get started, and then slowly, and then we will see how it goes.
So for people out there thinking, like, I don't speak Chinese, I don't really know the culture, I wouldn't know where to start. What advice would you have for people like that?
I would say just go to China. Like I don't speak Chinese myself too. Like I'm learning now, so it's super important to learn it. But I have this with every single country. So I lived in Poland and I started learning Polish. I lived in Singapore and I started learning kind of the more Singlish, right, to adapt. So for me, it's very important to speak the local language in the country you're living, no matter what country. But I think definitely for China, in terms of business, it's super important to basically get a connection with the locals, I would say. So that I think that's one thing which is super important. But also just move to China and just get started, but get started like slow. Like don't come there like the foreigner who thinks I'm better than you, or the foreigner who comes like, okay, I'm an expert in this field and you guys have to just listen to me. What I feel actually with a lot of foreigners who are doing that actually in China, like, okay, I'm a foreigner, I'm hiring a bunch of Chinese and they're executing for me and I'm getting all these companies in, where I think I would say we're more kind of, we have a local mindset, so we really collaborate together. So here in China is still this kind of hierarchy thing, like, okay, you're your boss, so I cannot talk to you or something like that, where I'm hiring a bunch of young Chinese, like, which are the same age as I am, and we're just doing great stuff together. And we talk with each other like friends, not like I'm their boss or something like that. And I feel this is working very well, and we've kind of built up a trust relationship, which also a lot of people say, like, okay, I cannot trust them. Like, the moment they get an offer somewhere else for like 100 RMB more, they will leave me and they go somewhere else. I haven't experienced that myself yet. So, and I don't feel they will do that very quick. So I think you have to basically put yourself in this kind of local community and just say, like, I want to learn from you guys, what you're doing. I think the moment you do that, but again, you should do that in every country you are. Right. And don't say like you're the expert there. Just like learn from the locals around. At least that's what I did. And with this kind of mindset, for me, it makes me able to make earlier like friends or skill fast and network, because I'm not the arrogant one in the group. Like, usually I listen what other people have to say, and then I just speak up, I feel, at the right moments, or I try to speak up at the right moments. But I honestly never say to my clients I'm an expert in China. Like, I'm a foreigner living in China. Like, my KOLs where we work with, for example, they execute, they are the experts. I just basically help you guys get into China, and based on the ROI we make certain decisions. And you can do this with a Western mindset, but as a foreigner it's very difficult to execute in China. So you need to find the right people for that. And we did this through KOLs, because the majority is still young, they're figuring themselves out too, and they want to work a lot with these Western companies. So I think we did great in that. Instead of I'm going to execute soon and I say, hey, you have to do this and this on WeChat. Yeah. I just say, I don't know exactly what to do on WeChat. I will ask a KOL how we can execute on WeChat. So this is partly like just be honest and transparent, like what you're doing and what you want to do, but mainly like just honest about it. Like I say, I'm not an expert. I'm just helping you, right? And then they say, okay, you have experience in any industry or any fields. I say, no, but we can work with you and we can figure it out. So the first month I will charge you low because I have any experience. Like, you're the expert in, let's say, in the sport industry. So you provide me your expertise, I provide me my marketing expertise, and the KOL provide their expertise within the particular target audience. So we basically bring everyone together, and then we create a win-win situation out of that.
So you've had experience in a number of different countries at a very young age, correct. You know, from Netherlands to Poland to Thailand to Singapore to now China. What do you see as, like, I'm not going to ask about all the other countries, but as China being different as an ecosystem, as a business ecosystem from the other places you've been?
It's very fast. That's it. Like, it's super fast. I cannot even keep up with it, right? And even when we niche down, for example, on Douyin as a company itself, it's going even too fast for me already. Just this one particular app to focus on as a company. So I would say the market is so fast, and there's so much experience in China, where I feel definitely with these KOLs, they're super smart people. Like, they know kind of what they're doing, right? Or they know what they're doing, I would say. So just, it's fast. So the moment you get started in China, you really have to find your kind of niche. You have to be in a particular area and just read a lot about that. This is what I felt about China. Because it's so fast, you cannot just do a bit of everything. Where I felt when I did something in Poland, it's way, way slower. So you can do a bit of everything, you can try things out. In China, you really have to just do one small particular thing. But because China is so huge, this one small particular thing is already like very big, right? So that's what we did with Douyin, when Douyin was still very small. When it had like between 1 million and 10 million users, which is very small for China. It's like not even interesting for the majority of the companies. Like, no, we want to go on WeChat or something like that. But because we focus on this small thing, we could deliver earlier because it's such a particular niche audience. But it's still 10 million people, right? So I think this is the thing. Like, China is all about the size. Like, I live in Shenzhen, which has now 15 million people. I think soon, next year's maybe 20 million already. Like, they're growing so fast, which is like the size of my country. So that's always what I say these companies who want to get into China. I say, you can just give it a try. And a lot of companies here actually in China say, you need huge budgets to get started in China, like even starting a company or expanding to China. I don't believe in that. You just have to be sometimes smarter than what everyone says, right? Like, if you do through a KOL, you can start a campaign if you do it smart for like 5,000 RMB as a company with an influencer with 500,000 followers. And then you can get started, right? So I think it's more about the size China has. Like you can take a very small cut of Shenzhen, right? Like if you have 15 million people there, like that's as big as my country. Why should you expand to the Netherlands and localize everything in the language and stuff, where here everything is still like in Mandarin or Chinese? And I agree, you have to localize. Like sometimes it's better to localize to Shanghai and then Shanghainese to do like run particular campaigns if you really focus on the Shanghainese people. But overall, everyone speaks here still Mandarin, and then some do Cantonese, but still Mandarin is like,
they understand
even in Shenzhen, it's still pretty much used. So the moment Shenzhen doesn't work, you can always go to another city, like because it's so big, it's like equivalent to another country, right? So I think this is so interesting to get started in China, but you should get this particular niche out of it.
So how did you determine that niche that you have? How did you, because you're very specific about that, like you came in and you knew exactly, how did you come to that conclusion that that's what you needed to focus on?
I didn't know it exactly. Like I think I tried different things out, like to get started. So of course I get started like, okay, we can do content marketing for WeChat, like everyone else was doing, right? But because I checked a lot like around, like what are actually other agencies doing, like these foreign agencies in China where they're like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands from, right? What are they doing? What are they offering? And honestly, 90% is you offering exactly the same services. You come to China, we open a WeChat account for you, we can help you with the Chinese entity, and then we do the content marketing for you for WeChat and Weibo. And that's basically it. But I was like, there's so much more, or at least I believe there's so much more than just WeChat and Weibo, right? It's not just these two massive platforms. There's so much more going on, and definitely with this, I would say kind of culture change in Chinese start to travel more. Their middle class is becoming huge. Like I think within 5 years they're over 700 million or 750 million, which is like 2 times the US, right? And that's a middle class who's starting to travel. So if you feel in your country already, there are a lot of Chinese here in the summer, it will become like more, 2 or 3 times more, right? Yeah. So I think this is, the market is changing very fast. So where we focus on is like the Gen Z mainly, Gen Z young millennials, basically everyone under 25. We really target on that instead of the older generation, which you also can reach through WeChat or Weibo. We really focus on this Gen Z because these are actually the kids of the older generation who started earning money, right? Like definitely because the government helped these older generation, like the parents of the kids now, the government helped them a lot to earn quick money, like quick bucks. So that's basically the thing, like these kids have money, they studied abroad, they speak English, and this is scaling so fast, this whole particular industry. So basically everyone who's on Douyin is within this kind of box of people who start earning money, actually middle class and higher, like they don't have like lower than that. So this is a very interesting market because these people are traveling like on a regular basis. These people are spending significant amount of money at Starbucks and these kind of things, right? So this is a very interesting audience. Plus they are like the new China, which is coming up, which is pretty interesting. I just did quite some research in China itself, right? Like Shenzhen is a very young city. Like the oldest people you will find is like 55, and because there was like this one-child policy, right? You have now there's like a big gap between, I would say, 35 and 50, and then everyone's under 35 who's now working at these tech companies or who's doing whatever, right? So this is a very interesting audience, and now you're allowed to have like 2 kids. So this group will become more and more and more. So I believe you really have to invest on that, and because these younger audience work at these good companies, at least in these first year cities, and then they're all from like, I would say, more rich parents. They're able to purchase the Western product. So that's where I thought like found this particular audience, this niche audience. So for me, it's just simple research. What's going on in China? How did this actually work with this one-child policy? How are the cities looking like? Like Shenzhen is a very young city, right? But I traveled to Beijing. Is more, you see there a big older generation too. So I think this is just simple research, which you can do on Google if you're outside China. I would say it's not rocket science, and just look around what's happening in the market and where can you fill the gap. And if you cannot find it out, you just try out, because you will find this gap very fast. At least what we found with this Western companies getting to China. Like, we still offer services for WeChat and Weibo. Even if there are like 100,000 other agencies around there, we still offer these services. Just because the simple sake, we help translating this Chinese content we're putting on WeChat to English. A lot of agencies don't do that, where I think this is pretty common sense, that you basically know
what you're actually
posting in another market, definitely if you're expanding, because you have to learn from that as a company too. Just this particular service helped us already to get clients. So I think sometimes you just have to be slightly smarter, or just use your common sense. It's like, okay, you have a Western company, you go abroad. Like, what do you do if you're moving abroad, right? You also do some research. Okay, where can you help with every single step to see what other companies are doing? There's so much gap still.
What is the biggest challenge that you faced so far, and how did you overcome it?
So the biggest challenge for me is scaling, definitely in China, to find basically the right talent,
good people,
the good people, and definitely because I really want to keep this kind of vision which we have as a company, that we have Chinese who have Western experience, who basically understand what Western companies want and then can execute in China. It's very tough to find good talents. So we're actually investing a lot in these younger people. So we're working like with plenty of interns who are almost graduating, and really help them out. So it's just tough. Like, still in China, you have to pay them more than other companies do. That's one thing. So yeah, I would say that's one thing. But because we're targeting, like, I'm young myself, so I can relate more to these younger people who are also just finishing up, and I say, okay, I can help you with my network I have in Singapore if you later want to go to Singapore or something like that, right? So I would say I'm more human to others. So this helped me to scale fast and find very fast talent. I'm just a human, right? Like, I'm not so super formal about it, even not with the people I work with. So I think, but scale is still very tough to find the right Chinese talent. Like, honestly, I don't care so much on which university they were or whether, what they did at university.
So how do you determine who's good and who's not? What's your hiring criteria?
Yeah, so I find it out after a couple of seconds talking to this person. So I can filter out very fast. So how I filter out in China is proactivity. The moment they have an opinion about one of my services, then I know I have to hire them. Because I feel the Chinese are not very proactive. Like, they're super great at what they're doing, but you have to say exactly what they have to do, and then they will do it perfect. Like, I think you see this already with the tech they're doing. Like, if you say exactly, okay, make the iPhone, then they will make a perfect iPhone, right? But the moment you ask them, hey, develop your own phone, then it will be more tough for them. So the moment they're proactive and have an opinion about the services or something like that. So the moment they apply, I send them a couple of things, like what we're doing with the company, and then we have a call after that. And the moment they have an opinion like, hey, you can do this better or you can do that better, then I know, hey, this is the right version. So where we're looking now mainly is, like, for example, students at Hong Kong University, which is, like, I would say a more westernized university where their studies are in English, but it is still in China. So these people are pretty interesting for us. Like, they speak good English, so they can directly communicate with our clients. Plus they get an experience from China itself, but also Western market. So these people, we kind of educate them on 2 different markets, which is good for them. So for me, proactivity is one of the key things. The moment the Chinese is proactive and they really want something, at least I didn't make a mishire in that yet. But yeah, I feel it very quick. And after that, otherwise I see, like, after a week or 2 weeks, if they're the right or not, if they really can execute. But I always ask, okay, what do you want? And sometimes they don't know, because they are always, like, in this kind of box. It's like, I don't know what I want, I just have to find a job, and then I will do the job great. But still, along the way, we try to figure out, like, hey, you want to do more on content marketing, or you want to do more on advertisements, or whatever it is, right? We try to find the right fit for the people, and then help each other in a way. So we're really, like, a bunch of people, I would say, who's working together. Yeah. So productivity is key, I would say.
So having been outside China and then coming in and spending some time here and knowing sort of what are the ideas about China from abroad, what would you say is one sort of common misconception that you hear about China that you're like, well, that's totally wrong, or people just don't get, or that you just learned having been here on the ground?
So I think the main misconception what people think is the Chinese cannot do much, or so in a way, like, it's still the Western, I would say the Western market thing still, China is China like 20 years ago, right? And because I would say the biggest difference, what I feel was a big misconception about is, I feel the Chinese, they just don't talk so much, they more execute and they do their thing. If I take a comparison from, for example, Shenzhen and San Francisco, right? The moment a company gets investment in two countries, like the same amount of investment, you see San Francisco companies earlier will fly business class, go in fancy hotels, have a fancy office, where Chinese companies, they fly economy class, they share a hotel room together, they invest in beds on their office, right? So I think the misconception is really that people don't understand how fast China is actually going. What honestly, in my opinion, you can only experience when you're in China. Like Shenzhen is going crazy. Like I'm going out for a week and come up a week later and there's like a skyscraper, right, with like offices running already. So it's super fast, and I feel the West feels just that China is still just China.
Like the whole made in China.
Yeah, the made in China is still this copycat country. Even when there are so many signs already of these successful Chinese companies who are executing great in the West, like for example OnePlus, which is doing great, but even Tencent is going now that side too. There are plenty of, Musically is also a Chinese company which is like super popular in the Gen Z in the US. So I would say there's so many signs, but still they have like this this view of China is just China, and like nobody knows even that WeChat is so integrated and they're way ahead of mobile payments already, right? And then they call this innovative in their world, where this is already like the aunties of 90 years old are using WeChat to buy their groceries. It's like I think this is the biggest misconception, that China is so much faster than the Western market thinks, that there will be a moment that the whole Western market is like, oh, we didn't know that, and what's happening now, and we cannot compete anymore.
You know, it's fascinating to see you know, how integrated they are here with the West, how much they know about what's going on abroad, and then when you look at how much the West knows about China, it's like incomparable. You know, the West knows absolutely nothing about what's happening in China, but China knows what's happening around the world.
Correct.
It's interesting to see.
Correct. And I think it's really the way now the Chinese are actually figuring out how to execute in the West. So the people at Huawei are a lot of people want these people at Huawei who did very well in the West. So I think this is the only thing where China is struggling with, how to execute successfully in the West. I think that's the only thing. Like here they have a lot of government support. It's like a communistic country, right? So it's like the moment you do something great, you get like the full support. Where in Europe you have all these different regulations, which is very tough sometimes for the Chinese companies to execute there. And just particular experience, like the Chinese are still very Chinese. So the companies you visit, like I visited the Total office, and it's very Chinese. Like people talk Chinese there with each other and stuff like that. Where I would say the Western companies are more, you can speak different languages sometimes, or these things. Like here, the moment they want to execute to the West, then as a foreigner, it's better to speak Chinese. Just because it's a preferred thing within.
So there's lots of opportunities there for foreigners who maybe even don't necessarily want to come and be in China. Is if you stay in your home country, but you're aware of what's happening in China. China's trying to get into your country, right? And how can you facilitate that and help them get in, right?
So the moment you have affinity or interest in China, I would say you can get a job already for a Chinese company. Like even in your home country, like there's so much developed already. These companies, they know exactly what they want. So the moment you have interest, you have an understanding of China a bit. At least even if you're in the US, you can get an understanding of China already, like just simply by reading, like with content I post. From my experiences, you have a couple of these YouTubers around. You have, whatever it is, right? Like people are creating content out of China. Westerns do that, but also the Chinese do that. So you can learn a lot just from the distance. What I just feel is like the Western don't have an interest in it. They just don't read it. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like it is there, people just don't use it. People don't use the opportunity of that you can get everything done here in China. So I don't understand that myself.
I personally don't know. I'm fascinated by what's happening here. You know, and I talk to people and they're kind of like, whatever.
It's like, no, it's really like that.
How can you think that? I like just look at what's happening, and they're like, okay, you know, I'm still gonna do my own stuff to W.
I just don't understand that. Definitely not. I would say even this small retail companies in Europe or in the US, you can accept WeChat payment, right? And you get a bunch of Chinese tourists, right? If you have there your WeChat QR code, you're already booming there. Like you can make so much more
sales. That one small difference.
It's a very small difference where you can already make a difference to be kind of integrated with China itself. Just have this WeChat integration like in your small retail store, because all these Chinese tourists they prefer to pay with these kind of things, but just the West doesn't know, and it's a very small investment and it's very simple to do. But it's just I don't know. It's just the awareness and just finally step like, hey, China is not just the cheap products I'm getting, but it's so much more innovative than my country.
What, in your opinion, are some of the untapped opportunities that still exist in China?
Oh, I think there are millions of untapped opportunities in China. So I don't know, like particular which. Like I thought marketing was pretty much solved already, but there's so many opportunities already there. I think you will find, like I don't know exactly which opportunities there are because there are, again, millions. I think if you're in a particular industry and you want to find the opportunities in your industry or even within your particular skill set, just see how others do it and what they're not doing. Because what I feel here, a lot of companies, when company A says something, then B and C will say exactly the same, or they will copy it. So if a bigger company says something about WeChat, then these B and C will copy it, what they say. Where I feel this is partly because of the culture here. Like there are not a lot of people thinking outside the box here. Partly because it doesn't really fit in society to think outside the box. You just have to follow the path they say that you have to follow, like, but that's in the West too, I would say.
For sure.
Primary school, secondary school.
Although it's more prevalent here.
Yeah, correct. So, but here's extremely, but all these companies are doing, and honestly, even the Western companies here are doing it. Like they kind of get sucked in that kind of environment. So the moment you have a skill set or you're active in an industry, just see what other companies doing and what they're not doing. Like if you know kind of what you're doing, you will see directly opportunities, and then you just have to think about like how I'm going to execute. So I usually do this through events. I just organize an event in this untapped thing, and then I see who's interested in it.
And what exactly they're interested in.
Correct. Right? And then you have directly the people coming, who are also kind of trying to tap it, or they have their own expertise, and then you can collaborate. It's like, hey, let's do something together. Yeah,
I talk to a lot of people sort of who are in the idea phase, right? And they're trying to come up with the perfect idea before they actually execute anything. And that's like a recipe for failure, especially in China, anywhere around the world, especially in China.
Correct.
Because trying to come up with the perfect idea when you don't have feedback from the market, and it just doesn't work, right? So doing something, having an idea, trying something out, seeing what the feedback is, what people are interested in, what they're not, and then sort of moving that way seems to work quite well here.
Correct. I did exactly the same. I've never a perfect idea. I've like tons of ideas in my head, right? It's just how do I execute them? And definitely in China, I don't know. I just try. Like the event we're organizing, I kind of don't know what I'm doing, right? I just organize this event because I see an opportunity. Influencer marketing companies, like agencies, and matching together with the influencers get together so you can collaborate. Or businesses want to work with influencers and get the influencers together. For me, it's common sense. Like, why is that not there? Right? Why did other companies not do that yet? Even the companies who are working with influencers. For me, it's kind of common sense. Like, you should bring them together in a way, and you just facilitate that. Like how I'm doing online already, just bring that offline. And so this is how I see it. Like, I don't know exactly how I wanted to do it. Like, I think now it worked out pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't work out pretty well, but I learned now along the years with owning different companies that you shouldn't take a big financial risk, and you don't have to. Definitely not in China. Like in China, you can get rich when you have nothing. I would say, like, there's so many opportunities. So, like, I don't take big financial risks, anymore. I just do it like very small, and then I will see how big it gets. So I think this is one of the key things people should look at. Like, you can always do something in China, no matter if you're smart or not smart, or no matter what kind of job you are. Like, yeah, you always find an opportunity.
I saw on your profile some stuff around mental health and mental health awareness, and it's an area that I'm passionate about as well. So I'd just be interested, like, what is it that you're doing in that area, and is it relevant at all to what you're doing in China, or is it completely separate?
So this is a pretty interesting topic, I will say. Like, I struggle a lot with mental health issues. I've been in a lot of therapy. So I would say in China it's a bit unspoken topic. So I'm a bit quiet about it here, because even the government is not really supporting it. So the moment they know you suffered from a major mental disorder, they will directly kick you out of the country, no matter which visa you're on. So I think this is partly why I'm a bit quiet about it. Like, I own different companies. Like, everyone always thinks like, oh, this is going great, he's doing great, but since I'm 18 years old, I'm suffering from like anxiety disorders. So like panic attacks. So I did like basically kind of yoga sessions or distress type of things on the toilet of my client when I had a meeting, right? Like, I have to go to the toilet just to calm myself down from a panic attack, which I got. So I suffered from a lot of different things. I had a company which I actually bankrupt back in Europe when I was 20 years old, and I came like 50,000 euros in debt.
Wow.
And that basically kind of triggered something what was going on already for a longer time. So I suffered from a depression for like 3 years. So I'm now almost out of it, I would say. Like, I think you will never get 100% away from it. It will always follow you in a way. You just have to know yourself better. So I suffered from depression and anxiety and panic attacks. I was suicidal for a long time. All these different things, like while owning a company, while living abroad in another country, right? So I have a lot of, I'm a person who really want to share about these things, like, because I didn't know that time what was going on with me, I shared it. Where a lot of people actually keep it. I was the person who shared it just because I didn't know what it was. Like, I went to the doctor and was like, what's going on? Because younger people have more physical pains. So I have like massive pain in my arms. I had a period that I couldn't stand on my legs. I was like laying 2 weeks in bed. The moment I stand up, I will fall on the ground. And I thought like I have physically something, but it's just mentally. So this is something I'm really, I really want to speak
advocating.
And I want to educate people, and definitely in Asia, because it's such a pressured society here. If I see what's going on in South Korea, China, and then also if you just look at the numbers, right, like more than 30% in China is suffering from depression at least once in their life. They're like, I heard stories that kids are jumping from condos to commit suicide when they're like 12 years old. So there's a lot going on, but if you really look at the numbers, there's in China only one psychotherapist for 100,000 people. So if you look at the numbers, like, there should change something. But as a foreigner, I try to watch out a bit. So I'm owning a company which basically kind of helps, makes a bridge, I would say, between psychotherapists and people who need it. But also we're educating the people itself, but also their family members and stuff like that. Plus we're kind of working now to offer a mental health kind of insurance. So different pricing model. So with a different business model that you just sign for a year and you pay a fixed amount per month, which is accessible to everyone, which is very important for us. It's accessible to everyone, and then you just pay this fixed amount and you can just go in
and get therapy whenever you need it, basically.
But we feel in Asia you cannot brand this as therapy, because the moment you say I'm going in therapy, then it's directly like, oh, we don't want to have contact with you anymore. Like, we heard stories in China also, like a girl got kicked out from university because she had depression, and the family doesn't want to have contact with her, where 1 out of 3 has depression. And probably a lot of people just don't know that they have it, and some people are a bit more open about it. So this is something we're trying to solve. but we have to be very careful with that in particular countries, definitely.
So what would you say has been most useful for you in your journey? Is it specifically psychotherapy? Is there other things?
I would say the therapy helped me in some ways, but at the end of the day, like it's you who have to solve it. Like you can take medication, but medication is just for symptoms. It's not for the thing what's in your head, right? So I see like mental disorders are like a kind of onion, right? So it's like you start with something small and then there come layers around it and you build up layers over the years. So how younger you basically are helping or are trying to solve it, it's so much easier when you start at 15 years old because these layers are not so much. Because you have to dig in the moment you're, for example in therapy, the psychotherapist talk with you and then you really have to dig in. So the moment you're 60 years old and you have to dig in through all these layers to find actually the core where does it come from. It's super tough. Like mentally it's super tough and in a lot of cases impossible. So you have to start very, very young with that. So that's why we're kind of educating on it because we feel like even you don't have to talk about it, but we want to educate in a way like even if it's online, we want to make it accessible for everyone. So we're just, I would say, trying out.
The piece that you mentioned too about like the physical pains is something that people often don't even know about, right? Like they have physical pain, they think it's a physical problem, like some sort of, and then they go to the doctor, maybe the doctor doesn't have any answer for them or they diagnose it wrong. And I mean, this is one of the areas that I work into as a coach, right? Like I'm trained in mindfulness to help people to sort of get into their body and begin to understand what's happening in there and get some information out of it. Like if people are having sort of these physical pains somewhere or they're not sure what's going on with themselves, what do you think is a good place for them to begin to find out what is actually happening? Because their local doctor might not even know, right?
Of course. That's what I had. Like your blood pressure is fine, everything is fine, and then they say, that's nice, but I still have this pain, right? So for me, what helped, like it took me a very, very long time. So I just had the mindset it will never go away. Like instead of pressuring myself, like I have to solve it. Like I had it at the start. I want to solve it. That's why I went so much to the doctor, and then I was like, okay, I just have to live with it, and then I will see if it ever goes away or not. But if I live with this mindset and I focus just on my life again, and what for me really helped is like at that moment you don't know what you love, but I just think about like, okay, when I was a kid, what did I like to do, right? So this really helped me in a way. Plus I really learned, for me it took a long time, I would say like for me it took 3 years, but there are people who never find out, but for me it took around 3 years to actually figure out who am I as a person and what actually triggers these physical pains or what triggers my panic attacks, what triggers my anxiety. Just to be very clear and open to yourself, like who am I as a person, what do I want to be, even if you that time don't know what you want to be, who do I want to be and what do I kind of want to achieve. And if you don't know these things, then I would say therapy can help to find out who are you as a person and what do you want to achieve. Because then you have this particular goal in your mind, like, okay, I want to do this and this and this. Like for me, I know I'm very sensitive for sleep. I need to get my sleep. So I need at least 8 hours sleep a night. If I don't get 8 hours, I will get a panic attack.
Did I wake up too early this morning?
Yeah, so now for example, this night I had like 7 hours or something like that. So it's too less for me. So I know I have to
find an hour somewhere
during the day to get a nap. Because otherwise I will guarantee get a panic attack. The moment I get a panic attack, I have to recover a week. Like because I will be sensitive for a week again. So first it started, I get a panic attack, I have to lay in bed a week. And then, but I used to get panic attacks 3 a day or something like that. So it was so tough for me. But now I really understand like what triggers me. So for example, sleep is very important for me. So I have a lot of stress, but not on my work so much anymore, but more like just stress inside my body. I don't know how I get it, but it's somewhere there. So you have to really figure out like, okay, how to manage that, like what is for me important. Like I learned now from when I worked when I was 18, 17 hours a day, it doesn't make sense for me anymore. I prefer now to work 4 hours a day, very productive. And I know, for example, I had a lot of financial stress, definitely because I was in this kind of bankruptcy. I had a lot of financial stress, and now I know like things I'm not good at, I outsource, right? So I have, for example, a personal assistant, right? A lot of people say, why do you have a personal assistant when you're 24 years old? But I just say, because this person can do the things I'm just not so good at. And I don't want to focus on, because it really stressed me out. It's just for me, like mentally, right? And you can get these people already, like virtual personal assistants for a couple of euros an hour, for example. So it's so accessible these days, and I'm thinking, if this person helps me to relieve me a lot of stress in terms of, okay, she will make invoices for my company and send it out, or she will call them like, hey, can you pay your invoice, instead of I have to do that, right? So I think these things, the moment you're not so good at it, or things you're not good at, you know from yourself you're not good at it, or you don't like it, just don't do it. And you don't have to hire someone full-time to do that. You can do this already these days for a couple of hours a week. At least that's how I do it. So the things I'm not good at, I just outsource so I can focus on myself, the things I like. And I feel now, since I do this with my company, I'm also way more successful. And then you get success around you. So I have a relationship again where I'm happy, my company goes well, I can travel all around the world. And like, I don't have a lot of money in my bank account, I don't need that. Because I feel I get now my happiness from other things, and now I feel I get more happy, or I can feel my joy again, or I start feeling my joy again. Where that time I could travel all around the world and I didn't feel joy. Now I start feeling it again. So I feel these things are very important to do, like know yourself and know your body when you experience that. Try or think about what did you like as a kid, and just start doing these things. Because this is like really your inner you. Like as a kid, you do whatever you want to do. If you're playing outside or something like that. So I think this is super important to get to know yourself and what triggers you as a person, and that gets me out of it. But it takes time. Like don't rush it. At least I didn't rush it, because I was like, okay, it doesn't help to rush. Why should I worry for something what didn't happen yet, for example? So this helps me a lot. Like I'm still not there yet, but it's going better. So that's why I try different things out. But I think I would say kind of advice, what I want to give is like, do step out of your kind of comfort zone. That's always what I did. Like I stepped out too many times that I lost my comfort zone, I would say. So I don't know how to relax anymore. So that's what I'm training myself to basically build up my comfort zone. That's why I'm like relocating now to one particular place. So that's my home, right? And I can build a home there. So I would say, but step out of your comfort zone, because then you learn what are your boundaries as a person, how far can you go with particular things. And if you're scared to step out of your comfort zone alone, then you do that with someone you trust or someone around you. So I do that partly, I organize this event, and I do this with my partners. I step out of my comfort zone, or with the influencers we work with. Like, because I'm 24 years old, I never organized a kind of conference in China. I don't even speak Chinese, right? I just do it. And then I try to find like these points of like people who are good at it. And then I give just my single expertise where I'm good at. So I think this is very important when you're struggling. You should know yourself and know what you're doing. But any person should know that, not even if you're struggling.